my next step of argumentation, and please switch it, is an attempt to put this modern Western humanism into a universal historical perspective. Because only in such a perspective we can bring it into the intercultural communication. It must be universal. So in order to bring this about, I think that, and to tell it to my colleagues and friends who are interested in theory of history, what you are hearing now is my philosophy of history. The good old philosophy of history in a modern form. That means not a meta-history about historical thinking, but a general theory about the temporal development of humankind. In order to make it universal, we have to start from anthropological universals. Something with every human being in every human life form has in common as a basis for a universal historical development within which Western modern humanism took place. So I have to make it short because the time is running. Time is inhumane. We always have not enough time, at least when you give a lecture and you would like to discuss it with the people. We have to make the time stand still into an eternal moment. But this is not an issue of the universities. You can have it maybe in mysticism, but not here. Now, anthropological universals. I have to make it rather short. There is one anthropological universal which is a necessary anthropological precondition for the development of humanism. Namely, that every human being is a person responsible for the morality of his or her doing and not doing. Every human being can be made responsible for the consequences of what he or she does. Only the humans in the whole cosmos and that is universal. In every human life form you will find it. Only the humans are forced to distinguish between good and evil. And they are in the midst, and they have to decide. And this goes along, and that is only a remark, I can't go into the details, and that goes along with an idea of social solidarity, and that is only possible for human beings, not for the chimpanzees and the baboons and so. That is empirically solid knowledge. Only the humans have the ability of empathy. And this moral responsibility has a social side based on empathy. This is universal and the starting point for humanism. There's a lot of other things, but I make it short and bring it to this one point. Now this is anthropology and not yet history. How do we come from anthropology to history? We have to bring into this anthropological universal temporality, and that means change and direction of change. Now change is clear, but what means direction? We must have an interrelationship between the pasts of different people and our present, and the perspective of the future in our present-day life. And how to bring such a perspective into the idea what it means to be a human being. My proposal is, let's do it in the form of a general cultural evolution. Don't be afraid to listen to the word evolution. But what I mean with evolution is the directedness of temporal change. Without this directedness, no history. You can speak of historicity, yes, all the time, but historicity is not history. There must be a directedness of time. And my proposal is the following. How did this basic idea of human morality start? The qualification of being human, in the Bible it is after you have pushed out of the paradise, you know. Now you know what good and evil is. Friedrich Schiller said that is the first step of human freedom, but that is another thing. The first step is that this quality is ascribed only to one's own people. Only we are humans. The others are not. This is an ethnic definition of the humane quality of being a human being. And that is the case in all archaic life forms of humans. You even can go into the museum in Rio, sorry to give an example here, in Curitiba, not from your museums, but from Rio, where they present wonderful things about the Indians in Brazil. But you can study what I mean. That this quality, what Kant has called dignity, is limited to one's own people. And that is rather easily to see, because look at the names these people have given themselves. I don't know the names of the Amazonas Indians and people around here. I only read as a young boy the Indian stories where, you know, that took place in North America. But you have heard about the Apaches, the Comanches. You have heard about the Bantus in Africa, the Khoikhoi in Africa, the San in Africa, the Egyptian, even a little bit more northern of Africa. And I can go on, and I have a long list of names the people have given themselves, and all the names mean the same: man. We are man. The others are not. And now, this is the beginning. And the end is our situation. And the general tendency, of course it is a construction, it is an idea, a concept, to disclose historical experience. The general direction is very simple: a process of universalization of these humane qualities of being a human being. But then, if that would be the last word of my philosophy of history, it would be rather a little bit too poor. So at least let's introduce a turn in it. And that brings me to my philosophy of history, that the universalization of humankind has two main periods. And the first one started with the so-called axial time, described by Jaspers, Eisenstadt, and others. But that is first to translate, and then we'll characterize this huge period of the universalization of humankind in universal history. Axial time is a time of a basic fundamental turn in the understanding of what it means to be a human being. You can say it in one sentence: the others are humans as well. And one's own idea about humankind is now universalized, in fact covering all the otherness of the others as well. And axial time theory, in the form of Eisenstadt, it's more, let's say, academic, it's more research related than the philosophy of Jaspers, but it was Jaspers' idea. Axial time means there are different processes of universalization. It took place in the old Jewish culture with the prophets. It took place in Confucianism, where it is said every human being is a potential Chinese. It took place in the time of the Vedanta, the Bhagavad Gita, it took place in Islam, in Christianity, and in all those civilizations where you find universalistic ideas of humankind based on the special value and quality of being a human being. This is the actual time turn, the great step in cultural evolution. Don't believe that the old form vanishes. This is an illusion. Don't think that there is progress in the traditional way, that now the ethnic elements dissolve. No, no, no. They play a role. They are still there, and I will come back to that. But the decisive thing is, here the idea of man is universalized. You know, normally, traditionally, in the archaic form, the gods are only the gods of one's own people. Simply. There is no universal god of, I don't know, what you find in the different tribes. But Yahweh, and that is what Eisenstadt calls the transcendental breakthrough. The divine world moves into the transcendence, and there it becomes universal. Well, I don't have to go into the details, because with this transcendence of the divine world, human being got the quality of subjectivity, of a reference, a very, you can say an individualistic reference to itself. Christianity is a good example. It brings a single personality, the single human being in a direct relationship to the transcendence, God, and you can find that in all other so-called world religions. And the word world religions indicate this universalism. And it is clear that this universalization was brought about in religious forms. And that was the beginning of a long period of the history of humankind, till the time when the difference between these different concepts of humankind became a problem. And that exactly happened when the different cultures came closer and closer to each other. And you know what happened? In the encounter, problems, bloodshed, killing. And this is the challenge which has to be bring about, and this is my philosophy of history, a second actual time, and that is our time, that is modernity. And this is the frame of my philosophy of history. And I will make clear what the difference between the first and the second is. Or you can say the pre-actual, the actual, and the post-actual, but I think second actual time is much better. And I will come back immediately to make clear what the new step of cultural evolution will be, of which we are a part. We have to do it, otherwise we will come into more and more problems. The main point in the actual time period is a multitude of universalisms of humankind. The example are the different world religions. The question is, in what interrelationship do they develop? And the point is, on this basic philosophical categorization, it is a mode of mutual exclusion. You can either follow this universalism or the other one. And this has no future in our time. And so I think that modernity, with globalization, which is older than only 20th century, it is older than Coca-Cola, and McDonald's. It started even with these Spanish, Portuguese people going to what is later on called Latin America, but let it out. We have to bring about a fundamental turn in the logic of the interrelationship of the different universalisms of humankind, from an exclusive to an inclusive relationship. And that is, and that has started the first elements of this inclusiveness of different universalisms with modern humanism. And therefore, I think we should pick it up, look what power of inclusiveness can we see, and how can we develop that further. This is my philosophy of history, and now the next step is to come to real history, what the professional historians call real history, as if these general things were unreal, and that is a differentiated interpretation of Western history in the perspective of this general periodization of universal history. Now I proceed from philosophy of history to theories in history. I look now at the Western history as a part of this universal cultural development of universalizing humankind. The main trend of historical development in humanizing humankind in Western history. Now, I will not go into the details if it costs too much time. What I want to show you is the following. How do we come close now to the real things, to the Bill of Rights, to the American Declaration of Independence, to the installment of modern educational system, to the emergence of anthropology as an academic discipline, and so on and so on and so on. You do it by constructing ideal types of main trends. It is a construction. It is a construction of different trends, and you need this ideal typological idea of different trends to disclose the complex reality of change in the last, let's say, between medieval time and the beginning of modernity in the West. You have 7, you can have 16, that depends upon what you really want to find out. I think 7, maybe even 8. I forgot something which I have already said, that is the trend of anthropologization, which is included in the art. There is something like aestheticization in referring to fine art and things like that. You can construct it. And then you have these ideal types, and they give you, how should I say that, good questions to the materials. And it is very useful now, not only to follow the single trends, which is rather simple, but all these trends are in an interrelationship. Now relate 7 trends to each other. I forgot to count the possibilities. It must be something more than 49 possible interrelationships. And now you see, you have a network of concepts, and you can use this network like a net for a fisherman, and you go into the sea of historical evidence, and you will see and get out with that network all the fish telling you something about Western humanism. This is my point here, to show that indeed you can come from more general philosophical ideas of humankind, of dignity, of cultural evolution, to the so-called details and concrete historical development. By the way, you can use these ideal types as parameters of intercultural comparison. You should not give them a normative quality and say only this one is humanism. No, this is a specificity of the West. Let's look for the others. What about idealization, secularization, and so on and so on? I mean, I can't go now into the details to show that this modern classical humanism is a step towards an inclusive humanistic concept of humankind. Just to give you one example, secularization is a necessary precondition to establish a life form within which the different religious beliefs can and have to live in a peaceful interrelationship. Without secularization, it is impossible. And that is one of the great advantages of Western modernization. And I would like to say this has a universalistic, a general validity. I don't see an alternative to that. But this is only an example, and we have to go to more details.